Hola a todos, buenas tardes, mi nombre es Magali Olivera y estoy presentando esta sesión de preguntas con Janis Rafa. Ella es directora de la película Azar, que es una coproducción de Países Bajos y Grecia y forma parte del festival Black Canvas. Voy a estar haciendo la entrevista en inglés, pero esperemos que cualquier cosa que tengan alguna duda o algo, pues nos pueden preguntar. Vamos a estar leyendo además las preguntas que quieran hacerle a la directora a través de Facebook, así que ustedes escriban en los comentarios y nosotros estaremos transmitiendo sus dudas. So first of all, Janis, thank you for being here with us today and talking about your film. I would like to start by asking you, why did you choose to talk about the subject that you did in your movie? Oh, I think your mic is off.
Oh, okay. Yes, it's okay now? Yeah. Right. Thank you for connecting with me and for inviting me in Blank Canvas. Azar, it's a film that has a kind of secondary layer, the autobiographical kind of references, starting points that connect to the particular place of Greece, of Athens, although the film never tried to claim reference to the place or where we actually are. It's more kind of timeless, spaceless kind of environment. For my own research and reasoning behind the film, the place where I grew up, Athens, is it has these chaotic gray zones in the landscape where you can find living and dead animals and humans in a very strange kind of connection with each other and juxtapositions also with each other. And I think that was one reason, because it's part of my own research in art practice, of how these relate and how you can understand geography through very different kind of observations of what a place is made and what is the history of a place. And I think the other is how we can learn to mourn bodies that they're unlike ours, what it means to understand life that is very different to our bodies, to our, senses, and to the way we inhabit this world and a place, a common place.
Well, now that you mentioned the importance of observation in your film, it actually caught my attention that there are barely any dialogues, right? It's mostly about observing. So I wanted to ask you about that. Like, why do you choose for the presence of silence to be so important throughout your movie?
I think silence derives from the muteness that we have attributed to the animal world. We consider it as mute, as silent, and that's a way to, for me, it was a way to give, to claim again the sounds of nature, of what silence means and what it also means to narrate without having the need to narrate through text and through dialogue, and rather narrate through visuals, through textures, through contact, this kind of imagery that the cinematography tends to always go a bit away from the action and give you a little bit of something else.
Which also makes me think about the fact that bodies have like a very important presence in your film, like maybe there's something about the way that you concentrate on bodies that has to do with that too. But I also wanted to ask you, like, what does it mean for you that there are so many physical presences of both humans and animals?
You mean in one frame, let's say in one scene, or in general in the film as a...
I think overall the film, it's something that happens often, right?
Yeah, I think it's a repetition. I tend to work with repetitions and rituals in the film, and the own interest that the film has, this kind of ritualistic attributes that life has, and the way we deal with it also, the circles of life that sometimes get completed in the film, and sometimes they just leave you somewhere and it's never complete, like the narrative itself. It's more like a circular, I think, film rather than a linear film. And in that respect, I think the bodies and even the characters, even the main characters, are not important in a sense of character-driven story, but rather of the sense of the presence of the bodies, of what it means to have these human bodies near, a roadkill, or near stray life. I think, or near, a highway where also another body is lying there somewhere. I think it has to do, I think, more of this layering of bodies within, again, a land, within a particular landscape.
And given the importance of bodies and closeness in your film, do you feel like during the pandemic and like the way we're relating to our own bodies and the other people around us too, has the feeling about your movie changed for you in that way?
It's an interesting story. I think it's the second time they're asking me. It's not a thing that they often pick up as a question, but it's interesting because that's something I've never thought before. And I didn't even thought myself before somebody asking it. So it's true. This kind of, the liquids and the connection between saliva and pee and, licking and touching and the dead and the food and these kind of things, for me, come much more naturally when I was shooting them or when I was writing them. I think that I have a closer relation to all these things that feel more natural coming out as representations. But I think after this certain situation we are in, I'm sure that people pick up even more on that connections. But when the film was first, the only screening we had was in Rotterdam Film Festival, the premiere, where I was there with an audience, and I realized that also in reviews that people were saying, "Oh, it makes me feel disgust." And that was something I never thought about Calazar. They would be disgusting in a sense. It was interesting. I think it has to do with, what background each of us has in relation to, animals, for example.
Yeah, for sure. I did definitely felt weird about seeing like so many bodies just like being, bodies mixed with animals, and our relationship with our bodies has changed a lot, and human contact too. So now it's become really meaningful, I guess, to see it throughout the screen, and it's probably not gonna be the same anytime soon,
I haven't seen it after the pandemic, so I don't know what is the feeling. I haven't seen Calazar since then.
It definitely happened to me, to be honest.
It's
but,
interesting. It's interesting. I think the only
I also wanted to ask you about.
Please do, because maybe you ask anyway about that. It's about the title.
Well, I was going to ask you that after that, so we can just go to that question.
We'll do it later.
About the title, because I did some reading about how it represents a disease, right? But I did wanted to ask you, why did you choose it? And also if you want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's like a little, again, kind of hidden layer in the film that is never explained, because it's not really important for me to communicate it to the viewer, but rather it's a kind of the essence of the film. It's one of the little kind of threads that comes from the beginning of the film, from the start. And Calazar is an endemic disease that is spread through an insect, like a mosquito type, from the blood of one dog to the next when it bites and takes the blood, and then it contaminates every dog it bites. And it's curable, but it's very difficult to cure. It is a bit like AIDS, but for dogs. The reason is there. The title is because when I was growing up in the 90s in a family where it had it was very sensitive about stray animals, so they would my parents were picking up stray dogs all the time from the street because it was full of them in Greece at the time, especially, and a lot of roadkill and then the disease appeared, and it really spread very fast because everybody was unprepared. Also to stray animals, which was it killed everything, but the owned ones were contaminated very quickly, and then we lost a lot of animals while I was young. Like we lost through months or a year, most of them. And I think that was a kind of a very strong moment for me to understand the deathly, death within a kind of familial context also, and what it means again to mourn something that is so different physically to us, but still feel the love and tenderness and care as if it was, one of us in a sense.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I feel that both death but also love are like two very important concepts in your film, right? So how do you feel like in the relationship between both of them, or has the meaning of love changed for you while you worked on this film? How do you relate to that?
No, I think it's a tribute. I think to exactly what you were saying. To these very opposite but concepts and concepts, but they're also so connected. They can be so connected to each other in the way I think the film trying to figure out a story that brings these things closer from time to time. I mean, the dialogue between what care means and what also, the deathly element around us is, and how we approach it also. Like you have car accidents, and we always put a kind of shadow, like a religious kind of little monument kind of thing to remember and remind that somebody lost their lives. And then you have roadkills everywhere and that nobody picks up and takes care. So for these kind of juxtapositions of what is important and what is not, what is visible and what stays kind of invisible or unnoticeable, has also to do with care and knowledge and acceptance.
Well, that's very interesting. This is a more practical question, but I was just wondering what it was like to work with so many animals in your film. How was the process to, control that?
Yeah, I think for Calazar, although it feels that it has many animals appearing, actually it was not such a difficult word animal, with the kind of the control of the animals, because all the environments we shot, all the locations, like the crematorium, which is also a kind of pet clinic, and most of the venues are actual. They really existed in the way you see them existing. So that made it easier. But for the dogs acting in the film, let's say, for the House of the Parents, it was not so difficult because most of my works tend to involve animals and particularly dogs. So I think I had an experience that I always let the animals loose. Like I let them really free to act in the way they know how, to respond to situations, but rather than ask them to act in a particular way, I usually let them in the space and in the situation and wait for something.
Okay. And besides that, in what other ways do you think your work as an artist has affected your film?
Yeah, I think 100%. I think they're 100% connected in the sense that I think Calazar was born because I had the possibility. I got a fund as an artist to make a feature film. Otherwise, maybe I would have delayed it or never done it. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to do a second one. I think that's in the process. But I think Calazar is a film that was born out of all the video art pieces I have been making. It's like a greater world that can keep connection with all the past video works. It's a greater world that can play again with the same elements, the same language, and also visual language, and the same kind of repetitions. And I think, yeah, it's a kind of requiem. It's a requiem to the chickens, for example, or to animals in general, to life in general, to nature. And this kind of requiem theme has been already in my video practice.
And besides the requiem thing, like what would be other subjects that you're interested in continue working through your art?
I think it's something with, I mean, even like you mean in my art or in general, in feature and in general?
I guess whatever you decide to work on.
Yeah, I think I cannot escape kind of the need to examine and re-examine again and again these connections, these hybrid forms that I tend to make, which is between very different bodies that always bring the natural world and the human world, the silence, the non-dialogue, the friction between bodies, the accidents, the incidents, all these kind of elements that I think it's kind of a repetition in my work that I cannot escape at the moment.
We have one question from the audience, if we can call it, the Facebook users that are watching this right now. It's from Nicolas Ruiz. So I'm going to read it to you. It says, an impressive film. Thank you so much. It made me think about death and the inevitability of the body. The idea of non-transcendence, the remains of the flesh after death. And I thought it was, in some sort of way, shooting. Were you thinking about this bodily aspect of death as an absence of a spiritual beyond?
Were you thinking about this bodily aspect of death? As an absence? Not as an absence, but I think as an attempt to deal with it. I mean, you know, we're all trying to find ways to deal with absence and with death. And I think that that was a way to deal with, with, you know, with something that is almost, you know, incomprehensible, at least for us humans trying to, you know, analyze and accept and realize and find a kind of a different truth in the world that has to be investigated, which is a slightly kind of different approach to what, you know, animals tend to do with the dead body, with death, with acceptance. I mean, there are many similarities there, and I think it has to do a lot with emotion, but I think for me, yeah, it's a tribute of how to deal with it, and that's a personal need that is hidden within the film, for sure. And I mean, what you see in the film is something I have been doing myself at times. So, you know, it's a very personal, I think, storytelling in a sense.
And do you feel comfortable with a audiovisual language rather than other kinds? I mean, because we were just talking about like the hybrid forms, you know. So I was wondering, like, do you think you're going to continue working with cinema or to like explore these things?
No, I think also in my art practice is very much cinematographic, and in the sense of production and in the sense of, you know, image result. I'm really stuck with that kind of structure of shooting and of producing.
And do you have like any near future projects that you could let us know about?
It's one project that is now released in Italy. I think it will be shown in several places internationally. It's a kind of a small video piece, 16 minutes, which is produced by In Between Art Film. It's a production company by Beatrice Bulgari in Rome. And she produced a series of films by different artists during the Corona crisis that have to do with domestic violence and towards women and gender violence, especially relating to the lockdown and, you know, be locked in a home and what home means, you know, all these different meanings of home for in different situations. And it was a response to that, also my work and the work of other artists, and it's called Mascarilla 19, Codes of Domestic Violence. And I think it will be also online at some point.
Wow, it sounds amazing. I can't wait to see it. Those were all my questions. If we don't have any more from people, and we are coming close to the time that they suggested for this, so I have nothing to add, but thank you again for your time and your answers. I hope that everyone gets to see your film, so thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.